everybody, we are back with another Halo Flashpoint video. And today we're doing a review of the Fireteam Cerberus box set. So this one has just come out in about late March. Some people may have it, some people may not. That's alright, we're going to go through it right now for all you that do not. Without further ado, let's get to it. So here's a bit of an overview of Fireteam Cerberus. So Fireteam Cerberus is a new 4-model team that is released for the UNSC/Spartan faction. Like I said, it's released in late March 2025, but some people may get it a bit later, around mid-April, just depending on what countries you're in. So from right to left, this Cerberus team comes with a Gunner with M319 grenade launcher. So that is the one on the left. It comes with a JFO with a target locator, not designator. It comes with a CQB with gravity hammer. It comes with a HAZOP with spike rifle. So these are all alternate models / alternate loadouts for the models that are released in the Wargames expansion that also came out in Wave 2 for Halo Flashpoint. And all these weapons and armors are featured in the Halo Reach game. So I guess you could kind of say that this team is based on or themed on Halo Reach. So the price point for Fireteam Cerberus at launch was £25 from the Mantic store, which is 52 Australian or 32 US. As always, local game shops such as Phoenix Game tend to have it a bit cheaper. So, Phoenix Game has it for 40. This seems to be the standard price that Mantic have chosen for their, 4 model teams they're releasing. This was the same price that Fireteam Hydra was released at, which is the extra 4 models that came in the Spartan box, and then they re-released them as a standalone 4 model team. So I guess going forward, you could probably expect most of the 4 model teams to be about £25. So we're going to go through each Spartan unit card individually. We'll go through, what I think the pros and cons may be, how much they cost, and all that other good stuff. And then when we get to the end of the video, I'll give you a quick rundown of my overall thoughts, and we'll call it a day. So without further ado, I'll do it in alphabetical order. CQB, then Gunner, then HAZOP, then JFO. Let's get to it. So first up is the Spartan CQB. I've decided to kind of break down these unit cards in a few different parts. So we got the history of, where the armor's from. Then we got a little bit of lore of the armor. Then at the bottom, we got the stats, and we got some key information on the page on the left. So first up, the history of the armor. So this armor was first introduced in Halo 3. This was one of the default armors you could get alongside, I believe, the Master Chief Mark 6. And then it was also included in Halo Reach as just one of the armors you could buy. The lore behind the CQB, or Close Quarters Battle Armor, was that it was kind of developed as like a specialized armor focusing on survivability in melee and, close quarters battles, hence the CQB. I believe there was another variant pretty similar called the CQO or some such like that. And the CQB was the better armor. But then we get into the stats of the actual unit card. So the CQB has ranged 5+, fight 4+, and survive 6+. And that 6+ gives the CQB at this time the worst stat on survive in the whole game, which is a bit interesting, but it is made up for by the fact that the model comes with 3 armor and 5 HP. Along with Chief, 5 HP gives this model the highest health rating in the whole game. And the new 3 armor, along with one of the other models we'll talk about later, gives it pretty good survivability against most attacks. Another thing you might notice is this is a 1-3 model along with the Zvezda. And a lot of people are pretty divisive about the Zvezda, so it might be interesting in the long run to see how much use this model gets just because of that decreased movement. It is default equipped with the gravity hammer, and we've already seen the stat cards for the gravity hammer before as it came out in the Spartan edition. This is the first use of the imposing keyword in the whole game, and the imposing keyword makes the CQB a very potent melee threat, as I'll just read it here. So imposing. This warrior has a greater presence on the battlefield, which causes the enemy to hesitate in hand-to-hand combat. This model receives a +1 D8 die modifier in fight or survive dice tests during an assault. So that means anytime this model is charging or just doing an ongoing melee, they get +1 dice. And then anytime this model is surviving in a melee, they get +1 dice. And that just makes this model pretty good in melee. On a charge, the CQB would have 3 dice. It'd have +2 for charging. It'd have +1 for the gravity hammer's smash ability. And then it'd have +1 for the imposing keyword, giving the model 7 D8 dice that this model would get in a charge. charge. And even in just an ongoing melee, it still gets 5 d8 dice. So it's pretty good in melee. It has got a 4-up fight. So it's got above average fight stat. Not as good as the Brawler, but I think that extra dice from imposing offsets the worse fight stat versus the Brawler. At the bottom of the page, you can see the Wargames expansion points values. So I think it's important to include that here. So the CQB with Gravity Hammer costs 50 points, making this is the second most expensive Spartan you can buy, not including Chief. The average cost I worked out, which I'll talk about more in my Wargames video, but the average cost of all the Spartans is about 42 to 43 points, putting this one a fair bit higher than the average cost. And so we'll go to the next page. A bit of quick thoughts. So I do think the CQB might be a bit highly costed due to its pretty much pure focus on melee. It has a below average range stat. It has got a good fight stat, but all this is offset by the poor movement. It is very survivable, which does help it out a lot. So I think in the long run, it's going to be interesting to see how much use it gets. Like the Zvezda doesn't see much use just because of that 1-3 movement. And I don't really see people necessarily deciding to take this model. Because even with imposing, this model can still be pinned, which is, as soon as it gets pinned, it's only going 1 cube. And even with 6-up saves, you might get snapshotted, you might get grenaded. There's any number of things that can happen to this model to force it onto the ground, and then you just can't move with it anymore. That Armor 3 combined with HP 5 does make this a prime candidate for a Hardlight Shield plus Health Pack upgrade, which once again, I'll talk about more when we go into the Wargames video. But with those 2 additions to this model, it can make it even better. Another option might be a active camo, just to make sure it doesn't get pinned as easily. And that's about it for the CQB. If you look at the model, it's a very nice model. I do like the pose with the Gravity Hammer. It'd be cool maybe in the future we get another few poses with the Gravity Hammer, just in maybe a bit more of a dynamic pose, because this is a very static pose. But we'll just wait and see for future. And with that, we'll move on to the next Spartan. So this is Spartan Gungar. I'm gonna butcher that, and I'm sorry for that, but we'll just go on and pretend that I'm doing it absolutely fine. So the history of this armor is it was first released in Halo Reach, which once again is the game that this specific armor variant that they released is based on. There have been other variants in like Halo Infinite and things, but this one's the Halo Reach version. As an aside, the Gungar is my favorite armor for Halo Reach, so I'm probably a bit biased on it. The lore behind the armor was that it was developed alongside the M6 Spartan laser platform, and the idea behind the armor is it's kind of seamlessly integrates the Spartan laser and activates some secret abilities the Spartan laser may have. Just it doesn't necessarily say how. And additionally, because of the sealed helmet, unlike most Spartan helmets, the sealed helmet gives the Gungar even better protection than most normal Mjolnir. So with that, we'll look onto the stat card. So the stats is a 4-up on ranged, a 5-up on fight, and a 5-up on save, giving the Gungar pretty fairly average stat line across the board for Spartans. 4-up on a Spartan's good, 5-up on a Spartan's about below average. So the main advantage from the Gungar, I believe, comes from the new keywords they added for it, being stable and guarded. The stable and guarded keywords can only be found in the Wargames expansion rulebook, which means if you just buy the Cerberus box, there's no way for you to know what those 2 keywords do, which is a bit of a shame. I think another key advantage of the model is the M319 grenade launcher it has, paired with the Tactician. So I'll go through the new keywords it has. So stable. Advanced targeting systems or greater strength allow this weapon's user to hold a weapon steady when moving. A model with this keyword may ignore the keyword long on any weapon if they have made an advanced action followed by a shoot action in that activation. It's a good lore inclusion because this armor was developed to work alongside the Spartan laser. The Spartan laser's new weapon card has the keyword long, and it's kind of cool that this armor works with the Spartan laser in that regard, and that if you have the Spartan laser with the Gungar, you can advance with it, and then you can still shoot with it even though it has long, which I think is a pretty cool inclusion. Even better keyword though, I feel like, is the guarded keyword. So guarded says, this soldier doesn't have a vulnerable head area, either because of their particular anatomy or extra protection from their equipment. When a model with this keyword is the target of a shoot action, which result in a rage test X, to hit the model, the range test dice roll will not benefit from headshot. 8s or 7s in some cases are a success, but grant no extra dice. So that is pretty much a hard counter to, say, the optics keyword. So if an enemy has put up a Deadeye in a high spot, he's shooting at you. Doesn't matter how many 7s or 8 rolls, those do not trigger extra headshots. And I feel like that will just make the Gunnaga pretty survivable in most cases, because I think we all know headshots are pretty strong in this game. And optics are the king of headshots, really. I feel like the inclusion of the M319 grenade launcher does make this model pretty much just a straight upgrade to the Mark 7 with the assault rifle armor. So the Mark 7 with the assault rifle has ranged 4, it's got weight of 5.2, it's got rapid fire, no AP, and, you know, a lot of time what you're going to be doing with the Mark 7's AR is just pinning people, but the M319 has range 4, it's got AP -1, it's got frag 5, and grenade, meaning that this model is pretty much just a straight upgrade to the Mark 7 because of the Tactician 1 and the ability of the grenade and frag keyword combination to also pin enemy models. So you don't even have to choose between rapid fire on the grenade launcher because you can just shoot it anyway and do a lot of damage to the enemies. And in addition to that, it's also got the second or lower half, so you can use it as a frag or you can use it as EMP. And the EMP half of the grenade launcher says yet another keyword. So it's got the EMP keyword, which is another keyword that's only available in the Wargames expansion at this time. And that reads, this weapon causes an electromagnetic pulse or similar disruptive effect on the target area. A weapon with this keyword will cause all energy shields to be depleted on all models in this cube with the target model, including the target model themselves. If the weapon targets a cube, all models in the cube hit will be affected. So that basically makes it a better version of Sticky. So not only is this a better, Mark 7, it's kind of even a better Sticky grenade or plasma grenade in that regard. So like I said, at 42 points, which is how much the Gun and Go costs in the points-based team building. It only costs 2 more points than a Mark 7, but has a more versatile weapon, also has Tactician, can also, sticky enemies, will also pin enemies. There's not really many downsides to it. Like I said, it's just a great card. So here's some quick thoughts. So only 2 points more than a Mark 7, only 2 points more than the Mark 7. This model is a good contender versus the Mark 7 as your new default choice for Tactician. If you pair this with the Spartan Laser or other long weapons, it can get even better just because of the ability to both move and shoot. I think the survivability that Guarded offers versus a lot of optics weapons can't be overstated, since a lot of time, a lot of your models will die to optics weapons. The fact that this one will probably survive most of the time is pretty good. And with that, we'll move on to the next model, the Spartan Hazop. So the history of Spartan Hazop is, once again, it's just included, or it's first included in the Halo Reach game, which once again is the variant pictured on the card and the variant you get as a model. The lore behind the Hazop armor is it was developed to be kind of a more resistant armor versus radiological, biochemical, and corrosive hazards that Spartans may encounter in various operations. And that is even above and beyond the normal rating that Mjolnir armor has. So it is really strong against those things, apparently. The stats of the card is it's a 5-up across the board. So ranged, fight, and survive are all 5-up, making the Hazop worse than average on all stats. This model does have the first use of the flight keyword, but I don't really see much more on the unit card that sticks out and makes it pretty good. This specific unicard plus weapon, being the spike rifle, doesn't really offer any real advantages other than the lowered point costs, which I'll go through in a second. The spike rifle as a weapon is a pretty low level threat, and it's unlikely to cause much damage most of the time. It does have the rapid fire keyword, which I guess is okay. The second profile, being the melee profile or the close combat profile, is okay, but once again, you only have a 5-up fight. It's just not very good, really. I mentioned it before, but the main advantage of the Hazop is the lowered point costs. So at 36 points, the Hazop/Spike Rifle is the second cheapest Spartan option you can take, second only to the Hazop/M45 Shotgun, which is in the Wargame expansion, and I'll talk about that one more there. The flight keyword, this unit is the first one to have the flight keyword, and I guess I'll read it now. This soldier is equipped with an anti-grav device or thrusters to allow them to reach high terrain quickly or soar over ground obstacles. A model with this keyword can pass through cubes without walls or floors during their movement, and may change levels without climbing up or down terrain. The model must end its move in a cube and position that allows it to be physically placed on the gaming table. If the model falls, it will not take damage or be pinned. And all that sounds great, except Spartans are pretty good at climbing stuff. Halo Flashpoint, if you can have a solid wall, you can basically climb it anyway. And flight doesn't really help you that much. Flight would basically help you on a map with a lot of high elevation, where you might want to cross from like a level 2 building to another level 2 building and not have to touch the ground for some reason. And so in that regard, flight would be helpful, except most maps aren't really designed or built with that much verticality. They're not being pinned from falling is okay, but a lot of time you're very rarely taking damage from falling anyway. So I think that part of it doesn't really give the model much benefits. But we'll go on to my thoughts. So like I said, the only redeeming trait of this unicard I think is lowered point costs. What this model does allow you to do is potentially take up to 4 models while including a Master Chief on your team. That would be 88 points for Master Chief, 35 times 2 points for the Hazop with the M45, 1 Hazop with the Spike Rifle, and then 6 points for one-man army, because what's the point of taking Master Chief if you're not taking the one-man army rule? And that would be 200 points total. So this would be the only way you'd be able to take 4 models and Master Chief in a list. But so other than that, there's not really many reasons to spend points upgrading the Hazop, because, like I said, it's got average stats across the board on 5-ups. It is cheap, so it does, I guess, allow you to buy better weapons, but having no good stat for either fight or range definitely got better options on other Spartans to do that if you wanted to. Next up, the Spartan JFO. So once again, this armor was first introduced in Reach. The lore behind the JFO, or Joint Fires Observer Armor. The armor was developed to allow lone Spartan operators that go out in the field and operate by themselves to effectively coordinate artillery and airstrike capabilities of all the UNSC military branches, being, the Navy, the Army, the Air Forces, and allow better joint branch communications. That is a bit reflected in the stat lines. So the stats for the model are, once again, 5-ups across the board. It is, once again, average on all stats. It is a bit made up for in that this one has Armor 3, putting it with the CQB with the best armor rating in the game currently. The combination of the Scout keyword with the 2-3 movement is nice in that the best part of the Zvezda being Scout, now being combined with a 2-3 movement, will make this a pretty speedy but survivable model. This is another source of Tactician as well, being Tactician 1, just in case you need that for some reason in your army. I do feel like the basic H165 target locator is a bit lackluster. In-game, it's supposed to be calling down artillery strikes and things like that, but I feel like the stats they've given it are a bit poor, really, but I'll talk about that a bit in a second. So at 45 points, the JFO is slightly above average on the Spartan army lists, being, once again, the 42 points is about average, so 45 points is above average. So some quick thoughts on the JFO is Scout combined with the Armor 3 plus 2-3 movement can make this a pretty speedy but a pretty survivable threat on the board. This is another key candidate for a Highlight Shield. So once you get up to Armor 4, I feel like most weapons are going to have a hard time doing much damage to you. It does have a lackluster stat line, and that combined with the pretty underpowered H165, I do feel like... So it does have a pretty lackluster stat line, like I said, because it's got 5-ups across the board. And I think that is further exacerbated by the H165 target locator. So I've done a little bit of math down the bottom using a calculator that is available. But basically, if you get 6 frag dice, which frag dice explode on a 4+, versus just any regular Spartan with 3 D8 dice and a 5-up save, with HP 4 and 2 armor, 2 energy shields, you're going to get more successes than your opponent, certainly, but a lot of time you're not going to be able to punch through the energy shield plus armor in one hit, and the target designator only has 2 shots to begin with because it has 2 use keyword. That combined with the long keyword really makes this weapon pretty underpowered because you only have 2 shots. That first shot is unlikely to kill anyone. Once you shoot it, the model you're targeting can just, get up and move away, might charge you, might do anything. It doesn't have, even the grenade keyword, which I guess it wouldn't make sense if it did. But that means that, the model has to have direct line of sight to whatever cube it wants to target with it. And I just feel like all that makes the target locator pretty underpowered compared to what you might expect it to be. I even got a little video here showing what it does in game. So you can see, the long keyword makes sense because you have to sit there and target it. But once it hits, there's 2 waiths, which are kind of like, tanks in the game. And they just get absolutely obliterated by the target designator. And so the fact that it isn't able to even necessarily kill a full shielded Spartan in one hit. It's a bit sad. With all of that done, which one do I think is best? That's right, I've made a tier list. So I am biased on the Gungar. Like I said, it is my favorite armor from Halo Reach, but I do feel like because of the just being a straight upgrade of the Mark 7, I think we all know how good Tactician is, and this model gives you Tactician with just a better weapon all around. You know, still got decent points, you still got room to upgrade it if you want to, and like I said, I just don't really think it's got many downsides. So my second pick would be the CQB. So I do think the CQB is a bit highly costed right now, but I think its survivability and its ability to be a pretty potent melee threat does offset this, and if you do upgrade it, it may get even better and even harder to kill for your enemy. The JFO is my third pick from the Cerberus box. It does offer some versatility with its 2-3 movement being kind of like a Zvezda, but it has no downsides. But the target locator, as I said, just doesn't really do enough damage versus some other weapons. And once you have those 2 shots, the model has no default weapons, which means you're pretty much forced to just run up and punch people. And it does give you some access to Tactician, but at this point, the Spartan list just isn't lacking in Tactician anymore. Well, I guess the Spartan list was never lacking in Tactician, so the Tactician doesn't really benefit the JFO that much. So my bottom pick would be the Hazop. I was pretty negative on it when I first went through it, and like I said, although quantity does have a quality, the unit card just doesn't offer any redeeming features with the spike rifle. The only real reason you take it is if you want a bunch of models. Maybe you take it to start putting upgrades on it, but with the 555 across the board, you just have better options in other models if that's what you want to do. But overall, the Cerberus pack does offer you 2 very good units in the Gungar and the CQB. All the models are pretty good to look at. I think the inability to use the box without the Wargames expansion, because you haven't got access to those 3 new keywords without the Wargames expansion, is a bit sad, and hopefully in the future they might think about that. And that is about it for this video. So thanks for watching to the end. I'm going to go through the Wargames expansion next up. So this review was kind of just Cerberus box in a vacuum and just comparing the models against each other and against what was released previous to Wave 2. So my next one's going to be about the full Wargames expansion, including the unit cards and the new rules and some of the new weapons. So keep an eye out for that. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like, favorite, subscribe, comment, all that good YouTube stuff, because it really helps me out, keeps me motivated to make more videos. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.